Hello and welcome. We are pleased that you've joined us for today's session, Redefine Your Business Value with AI. Before we get started, I do want to acknowledge our big news that Moss Adams and Baker Tilly are joining forces to create a new firm, one designed to serve the needs of the middle market. It's really exciting, and you can read more about that on our website from the link in your console. And now I'm going to play our housekeeping video.
Welcome and thanks for joining us. Moss Adams webcasts are designed to help elevate your business performance. Transform your future for the better with advisory solutions tailored to your vision and supported by our collective technical resources. Our presentation will start in a few moments. Before we begin, here are a few things to keep in mind. You can customize how you both view our presentation and interact with the presenter. For better viewing, close all other applications and turn up your speaker volume. You can also adjust window size and placement or enter full screen mode using the controls at the top of the window or dragging the bottom right-hand corner to resize. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a series of icons, each relating to a different aspect of our session. You can download a PDF copy of today's slides from the slide deck and handouts widget. You can ask our presenter questions during the webcast by typing a question in the Q&A window and clicking Submit. We'll do our best to answer all questions during the presentation or follow up via email. If you experience technical difficulty during today's presentation, refresh your browser by hitting the F5 key. As a reminder, the presentation you're about to see is not legal, investment, or accounting advice. We encourage you to seek the counsel of a professional service provider to apply this content to your specific circumstances.
All right, we have two presenters with us today. We have Casey Fike, Senior Manager, and Jessica Carius, Generative AI Consulting Senior. If you have questions for either of our presenters during the presentation, please submit them through the Q&A window. This is a short webcast, so if we don't have time to get to your question, we will follow up with you afterwards. And now I would like to turn the floor over to Casey to get the presentation started.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy, and thanks for everybody for attending the last official webcast as Moss Adams. So pretty honored to be a part of that and honored to be talking with all of you. But for today, I think as kicking off this series, we really want to bring clarity and bring an understanding of generative AI. It's clearly AI is a hot topic. It is not going away. But I think as we kind of step through this series, it's been, let's get some building blocks together and just kind of understand. And I think first and foremost is this concept or developing generative AI fluency. What does that mean? I think, as I mentioned, AI is constantly in the news, but for us working with our clients, we really want to help them understand what is this. So if we kind of step through this slide, it's generative AI, it's conversational participant, right? It's somebody, it's technology you are having a conversation with. You can assign tasks to. Jess will cover that later in the presentation, but it's not your typical search engine. It's not a Google, a Bing, Yahoo. It's actually thinking through, like, how do I have a conversation with somebody? How do I prompt that conversation? It's kind of walking over to like what it is not on that second line. It's not a database of facts, right? So I think, when we talk about data, I think a lot of our minds go to Excel or a database table, very structured. Generative AI is not that sort of technology, in the sense of it's built on a large language model. We won't get too much into that. We don't want to get very technical in this webcast, but the concept here is you can use this information, this technology to generate content, to generate marketing information, to bring efficiency to business tasks that have probably burdened you if they're very heavy in text and PDFs and documents and guides. This third line item, it's an analyst, right? I really want to focus here on like what it is not. Gen AI, as we talk to our clients, as we think through it, you still have to keep your hands on the wheel. It's not just, well, I put it into the tool said this, and I ran with it. It is still generating text, images, videos, whatever that may be. But at the end of the day, the human or the user still needs to keep their hands on the wheel and validate those outputs. It's kind of building onto that. We really view generative AI as not replacing staff, not replacing a workforce, an entire workforce, but the word we like to use is augment, right? We help our clients and we help them think through how can we use generative artificial intelligence to bring some efficiency to our business processes, right? And so what we see here is this generative AI kind of coming together with a human interaction where I can now use this technology, to bring that efficiency, to bring that insight, to augment my day-to-day, where I might have been just buried in, if I think of this group, manufacturing, probably a lot of heavy documentation around contracts. Having to sift through contracts takes quite a bit of time. Whereas if I have those in our own internal GPT, I could then just prompt, ask questions on specific contracts. Where do terms in multiple contracts not align? Things along those lines. But it really, at the end of the day, it's using this technology to kind of help augment and bring efficiency to our business processes and not replace kind of that frontline worker. So some pitfalls, just kind of what we've seen here. I think if you work, the way we work with our clients, it's never technology first. It's always, let's understand your processes. Let's solve for your pain. Where is that pain? So kind of these pitfalls here of what we're looking at is just maybe some projects where we've worked with somebody or we've heard about where they've led kind of that, hey, we want to we're going to buy this tool. We're going to implement this tool, this generative AI tool, but they don't have a clearly defined business case around it, right? Again, I get back to pain, burden by documentation. Where does that exist within your business process? So I think for this first one, it's don't drive, don't be technology focused, but it's really understanding where's the pain point, where's the friction that we need to solve for, and then understand what is the right technology we need to use. The second bullet, I hear this a lot where, hey, we have an executive leadership team, we have our CEO, our general manager. Their objective is we want to use AI. What does that mean? Again, I know we only have 30 minutes today. We could probably talk 8 hours about use cases around AI. Where does that apply? Again, where's their friction? What we like to see kind of gets to that first point that I mentioned, where it's understanding your process, where's the pain, and then applying the technology and not just saying, hey, I heard about this, invest, like I said, dollars. We're going to invest our employees' time, goodwill around technology products, just because that time, that benefit, the burden of implementing, those need to be successful, right? So this can't really just at the end of the day be, hey, we want to do AI, we're going to go experiment. The way I kind of think about this is start small, find a specific use case, understand what the right technology is, and then implement, and then let that grow organically. This is the third bullet. I kind of cover this in the second one, but it's just understanding, if we're going to invest in technology, that's going to take time, that's going to take money, that's going to take political goodwill if it's not successful. So you don't want to go just wild and just implement a system just for the sake of implementing a system or technology. Again, I've said this multiple times and I'll continue to do so. It's just, where's there friction in your business process? And then understanding, is generative AI technology the right fit for that? So Jess, with that said, I will pass it to you. Jess, I can't, you're breaking up a little bit.
Am I back?
Keep talking.
Okay, going. Oh, I see.
There you go. You're back.
Okay, we're back. I was saying with the resource restraints, there's going to be two components to that. So you're going to have your element of resource when it comes to implementing technology and data scientists and engineers, and that's one half of it. But then you also have resources when it comes to AI fluency and being able to understand how to use those tools, right? So there's no point in implementing a new Gen AI system or a frontline chatbot when no one knows how to interact with it or no one knows how to work it. And so that's something that we really want to hone in here, is that concept of educating and empowering employees to use these tools. So on this slide here, what we label as Gen AI enablers. A common misconception when you go about generative AI is that people think it's this all or nothing transformation. Everything needs to be ticked off all at once, and that can't be further from the truth. So what you'll find is that it's actually this really gradual, incremental process where things build as you go along. So we highlight fluency as we believe that's the key starting point. But you'll find, for example, as more employees are using it and understanding it, they'll start to identify those use cases along the way. And as you identify those use cases, that's then when you start to say, right, we need this data, we need this type of quality if we want to make it work. Looks like we need to implement a risk management framework around this. What value drivers are we targeting along the way? And you'll start to add that on along the way in this incremental journey. So we have this AI fluency table that I like to visualize when I think about this. So if you think about your team's AI fluency increasing, you'll also start to realize the scale of your AI use cases progressing as well. So when I talk about scale, I mean not that, okay, here's a chatbot, we're going to hands off and leave that and let it do its thing. It's like, well, no, where is it actually providing value and where else can we apply the technology that's behind it? If we're talking about summarizing documents, how many different teams need this type of tool and how can we apply it and work it into those different workflows along the way to create that business value? You've also got your AI maturity that's building too. So that's going to be your AI governance. It's going to be your teams on board, the vendors that you're interacting with, your overall business processes that are interacting with generative AI. It's that full scale maturity front that's going to be increasing along the way with your use cases and your AI fluency. You also see here we have the concept of assist, augment, and agent. So this is going to be to how you're interacting with Gen AI as you're going up that scale. So you can think of assist in the way of, let's say you're using it to write a report, right? Pretty standard use case there. If you're using it just to assist your report writing, you're probably going in and you're saying, I'm writing a report about ABC, help me write a draft. That's going to assist your overall workflow in that process. But as you start to understand how to use the tool and how to prompt and the different components that go into it, and we'll go into this in a later webcast in the series in more detail, but then you're going to start to augment it because you're going to be able to provide it past examples. You're going to know how to prompt with it. You might turn it into a workflow that more than one person is using internally. And that's when you're going to start to really see the value come from those augmented workflows. And we like to say that this can't occur to its full efficacy without the top-down leadership and the bottom-up enthusiasm, all enabled by that AI fluency. So what we mean here is that it's going to be the people on the ground in the midst of all those operational processes and pain points that are going to be the ones that identify those use cases and have that prime environment for innovation. But you can't innovate and you can't experiment sustainably unless you have the top-down leadership encouraging it and providing the direction and resources for it as well. So it's going to be this fine balance between education, leadership, and innovation, and all parties need to be involved in that front. We also say that this avoids the notion of AI shadow users, and that comes into your risk management here as well. The last thing you want to do is to just ban Gen AI, say, no, it's bad, we don't know how to use it, no one use it at all. Because then what you're going to have are employees who are using it on their mobile phones, on their personal laptops, right? People are going to find a way, and then you're opening up your organization to risk. What you want to do is open your minds, encourage it, and provide the resources to educate and train your employees to use it responsibly. And then that'll help you on that incremental journey along the way.
Jessica, I'm sorry, can you go back to that slide? I just want to add one thing. I apologize. But, you brought up this concept, and we didn't really talk about it, but the risks of third-party AI tools, right? So I think, I have an example, a client, they're private. They had said, hey, we uploaded our trial balance to ChatGPT and it kicked out this really nice dashboard. I'm like, that's great. But I think one of the risks you didn't think about was that data, your private data, is then retained by ChatGPT and then trained on further models. So in essence, you just created your own data breach where it's, you brought this piece around risk, around educating things that we've been talking about, Gen AI fluency. What are the risks of using external tools versus perhaps we want to have one internally or smaller use cases that I think challenges are, and I talked about this, it's a new way. We're thinking about data, unstructured data in a whole new way where we can get value from this. And these technologies are extremely powerful, but to this, that governance, that fluency that we've been talking about, I would overemphasize to everybody listening that, if you are using third-party tools, what is your policy within your organization to use ChatGPT or Anthropic? Just because there does present a risk where if I do send confidential information, or if I'm a healthcare provider and I put PII into ChatGPT, that's retained, that's trained, that is now public data. So I think that's, I know we don't have a ton of time, but I just want to make sure that everybody's listening that there are risks with using these third-party tools, which produces a very unique situation where we want to allow our employees to use these tools. They might be using them at home for their own personal reasons, but how do we kind of keep our data in that sense, right? So it's kind of gets to this fluency of just, it's a new way of thinking about data and how to use data. And again, I just think for everybody listening, just be aware of kind of those risks, those pitfalls, if you don't have a kind of internal GPT on what your employees could do. Again, apologies for jumping in, but just want to make sure that everybody's clear.
Back to you, this one.
Got it. So I think here it's, again, the way we think about this, and, honestly, it's Jess and I would do data analytics, AI, two very, very broad topics. Again, we could talk all day about the use cases, the technologies we use, but it's, again, understanding, what are those business cases? What is the right technology that we should apply to those business cases, those business processes, right? So I think things that we think about when we're looking at, is generative AI a good use case for our procure to pay process, our rec to check process? The way I think about that is really, understanding the friction. Where is their pain? Where am I taking a series of documents, right? Unstructured data. So emails, PDFs, policies, procedures, user guides, whatever that may be, and having to do something with that, like go find a specific term or do a reconciliation of, does this updated contract we receive match, a previous contract? If not, where are the deltas? Other things that I think about of understanding what is the right technology to use is how standardized is that process? Again, if there's a lot of deviation where, hey, one case we might do it like this, one case we might do it like this, that goes off into an infinite amount of use cases, depending who the end user is. These are kind of challenges that we have to work with and understanding, what is the right technology? So as we kind of look at this graphic on the left, it's, what is that effort? And then what is that human knowledge, and how can we bring those together? Again, things that I think about where, procure to pay example, your procurement team, there might be policies, there might be procedures on what's the process to onboard a new vendor. Some of those can be documented, some of those might not be documented. Some of those might be just internal knowledge because your procurement manager's been in that position for 20 years. But I think the challenge there is, if there's questions, if we bring on a new staff member, how do we make that process more efficient to bring on a vendor? And is it this new staff member reaching out to the procurement manager every 5 minutes with a question? Or is it, can we automate that task, bring those policies, procedures, knowledge from that procurement manager, again, into an internal GPT and ask those questions? Or where are we doing, again, I keep saying reconciliation. Again, I think our minds, everybody on this call is, I say reconciliation, and we're probably thinking multiple Excel workbooks. But I think with generative AI, my mind now goes to reconciliation. It's text document to text document. Where are their deltas? What am I trying to populate? Where's the friction that I can apply this technology? So if we think about this, what is the right use case for generative AI? If we look at this, the top right corner there, it's high level of effort, human knowledge of the task, which again, we can harvest that information, like I was saying earlier, whether it's policy, procedure, or just talking with an individual that knows the process. There's ways we can harvest that and get it into an internal GPT. And then that's where you'll see kind of the efficiency within that process. And if we shift to the right hand of the slide, does it add value? Does it bring efficiency? Or is it, hey, we're just out there spending money on this really cool tool because our CEO needs. Can we innovate? Can we introduce ourselves, our product, our company into new markets? Again, we talked about this a few slides ago, content creation. How can we offer a new suite of products? How can we market that? How can we write copy on marketing briefs, social media posts, however we're performing marketing activities today? If I think about generative AI, that brings a ton of efficiency to that process. And again, full transparency here. I post a series of articles on Moss Adams, LinkedIn. All those are generative AI generated, right? So again, as I was talking about earlier, I'm working with people, we're transcribing things. I put them into our internal tool that kicks out an article. Again, like I was saying earlier, it's my hands are on the wheel because our internal tool doesn't match the voice of myself or what I consider my voice. But again, we can create marketing material in seconds, whereas like taking and writing articles and setting all that time up, that would take me hours and hours, whereas I can put out an article ready to publish in 30 minutes. Customer experience, Jess, you were talking about this earlier on chatbots. I don't know, for those on the phone, for those on the call, if anybody's ever had a positive experience with a chatbot on a website. I had to deal with one on Amazon.com. Wasn't the best. Apologies to any Amazon people on the call. But the way I kind of think about this chatbot is if we could augment our customer service, customer success teams with an internal knowledge base on previous issues, that person complaining, they could be connected directly to a human, but then that customer service rep is augmented with an internal knowledge base on customer history, like problems, like issues, whatever that may be. That provides a better experience for the customer, for the CSR, whereas they're not just feeling like they've been fed into a queue. And then the last piece also, I touched on this in the previous slide when I cut Jess off, but it's understanding what are those risks for an internal versus an external use tool. Again, my mind always goes to the data. Where is our data going? How is it being stored? Who has access to that data? Understanding that as we kind of scope these projects out and understanding where we can venture to. Those are always very key for me. So again, to kind of bring it home a little bit, it's, we do think we've been talking about this, but we do feel it's a very easy way to get started, where it's identifying that champion. Like, who is that person? Again, somebody within the business. What is the problem? Again, I talked about this over and over again, but where is there friction in business processes? And it kind of gets to the last slide. Is generative AI the right fit, or is it some other sort of automation? And then stepping into that is understanding that business process. What does that friction look like? Where are we getting documentation from? Where does that documentation or data exist? And do we go find a solution? Do we go buy a custom-made solution, or do we build it internally? And then this next piece, Jess was kind of touching on this as well, but things that I think about, and I talked about it earlier, where I think, if I'm kind of an entry-level person, my biggest concern is AI is going to take my job. Not a high-skilled worker, probably easily replaceable. Whereas the way we view it is what we said is, this is to augment that worker's day-to-day. How do we bring more efficiency to that person's process? Not eliminate them, but again, if we can augment our kind of entry-level team, that provides us the ability to not have to backfill, right? And bring some efficiency there. And then the last piece is continuously improve. So we've done a proof of concept. What did we learn? How do we adjust? How do we then implement and make it more successful? Amy, with that said, I will pass it back to you, which is now the final Moss Adams webcast. So looking forward to performing as Baker Tilly here in a couple weeks, or today.
Yes. Well, thank you, Casey, and thank you, Jessica, for a great presentation today. And to our audience, if you have questions or comments, please reach out. You can drop a note in the Q&A window now, or reach out to the presenters directly. Their contact information is in your console, as well as in the slide deck, which you can download now from the handouts window. And the next session in this AI webcast series will be July 9th. And that's where Casey and Jessica will go over how to leverage adaptive insights and inventory forecasting to boost performance when you become a data-driven organization. There is a link in your console that will take you to more details on that one. And finally, here's a link to a survey for today's presentation. Your feedback is always appreciated. And again, thank you for joining us, and take care, everyone.
Thank you for your time.